Conservation for over 8 years, providing ecological and stewardship advice to landowners, leading guided outings, and delivering a variety of environmental outreach programs. She's also a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee for Prince Edward County. Prior to her current position, Ewa worked on conservation projects across Canada as well as abroad, including studying reintroduced southern flying squirrels at Point Pelee National Park, eradicating invasive sparrows on a remote island, and managing a population of endangered parrots on Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. As her background indicates, Ewa is no ordinary person. When she takes a holiday, it's usually an exciting and rigorous experience, like trekking through the Himalayas or hiking the wild coastal trails of Newfoundland. Her enthusiasm is contagious, whether she's studying the Murray Marsh by canoe or leading a BioBlitz walk looking for frogs. You know you'll have a great time and you'll learn a lot if she's your guide. If you have an opportunity to go on a hike with Ewa, jump at the opportunity. You won't regret it. She has a way of connecting with everyone, engaging them in her love of nature. Her head is chock full of wonderful ideas about the environment, and she has a way of making those ideas become a reality. From restoring prairie habitats and reintroducing prairie species at Goodrich Loomis Conservation Area and sites along the Trent River, to having had Trent Conservation selling native trees and shrubs to encourage the planting of native species, which in turn are beneficial to the insects that depend on those trees and shrubs. A couple of years ago, we enjoyed learning about the 7 wonders of the Trent when she spoke to us in Bloomfield. Tonight, we're going to hear more about her innovative ideas and how she's working on them being adapted to help native species and ameliorate the efforts of climate change. Ewa.
Wow, Sheila, thank you so much. That is the warmest introduction I have ever heard. And I did spend the day in the field today and I was really cold, but I'm just glowing from the inside. That was so sweet. Thank you very much. It's like I have a twin and she's amazing. All right, so I will attempt to share my screen and hold shift to select. Okay, there we go. And it's loading. All right, so I'm going to set my timer to make sure that I don't talk for too long. I spoke to a gardening group in Belleville a couple weeks ago, and people were falling asleep on camera. Okay, maybe just one person, but it was pretty funny. So I'll try not to bore you to sleep here, but if you doze off, that's fine. So thank you so much for the invitation to meet with everybody. It's been a long time. I do miss meeting in person, but this is also really nice and convenient. So tonight, I just want to share with you a little bit about the Natural Cover Group that's active in Prince Edward County, sort of I guess in talk about the Environmental Advisory Committee that sort of was the start for this group, and talk about some initiatives that we're involved with, and we hope that all residents in Prince Edward County will be interested in joining. So there we go. So to begin, to give you a little bit of a background on the Environmental Advisory Committee, or the EAC. So it was established in February of 2020, just before life got very exciting. And I remember there were advertisements looking for folks to join, to volunteer this committee, and I thought, I don't know, something seemed, really attractive, and I thought it'd be nice to sort of give back to the community. And in the description, it said there would really only be about 4 meetings a year, and I thought, oh, I can handle 4 meetings a year. turns out there's a meeting every month and then some other meetings and whatever. So that was a complete lie, but it was too late to leave the group. So I guess the call went out and there were quite a few applications, and the counselors that are on the committee, so Stuart, John, and Kate, sort of went through all the applications and sort of picked experts, community representative that they asked council to basically endorse. And so the community volunteers are myself and 5 others. Jane Leslie is our chair, and she does an incredible job. I'm sure you guys know. And we also have some technical experts. So Quinte Conservation, which is our conservation authority, of course, is represented. We did have a representative from the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, but I feel that position's opened up again. And we also have someone from Hastings, Prince Edward Public Health that is part of the committee. So there's a lot of expertise in here, a lot of folks that are on the committee, either when they were working professionally, were working somehow related to the environmental field, or some of them are in school. We even have a youth member. Some of us are still working in the field. So there's a lot of talent and passion that's part of the committee. And just so you know, that the EAC's lifespan is the same as that of council. So we'll be around, this bunch of people will be around for another year. If any of you are interested in joining for the next iteration of the EAC, I encourage you to apply. Just beware, it's more than 4 meetings a year. All right, so just to sort of give you a flavor for the mandate that the EAC has from council. So there are kind of 5 main things, and one of them, of course, is to engage with the public in Prince Edward County. To raise, their awareness of various issues related to nature and the environment. We want to draw on the knowledge and expertise in our community, because there are so many people who live here or call this place a community. As all the members of PECFEN, that have a lot that they can contribute. So that's important to use those people and their talents and their passions. We are to receive or initiate deputations from other organizations, and that's happened quite a bit. And we've also given deputations to council. We are to provide advice to council. So in terms of power, the EAC has no power. We don't make any decisions. We are basically a body that provides advice and information, and council still has to make all the tough decisions. And we do put together an annual report, and Jane has already produced one already, and it's somewhere on the county website. I don't have a link for it. And lastly, we coordinate with various experts and folks in the community on a voluntary basis to come up with new initiatives. So again, a rather broad mandate. When the EAC committee first got together in February, we were asked by our chair to put forward, each person was to bring sort of 2 issues that they felt were important to address, and sort of steps on how we should go about addressing those environmental issues. And there were quite a few ideas, and we distilled it down to a few sort of main themes. I don't know if you can hear my dog growling, but he wants me to pet him. Shh. and he's going to be kind of trying to steal all the attention. So some of the themes were around water and drought and flooding issues. Themes, of course, around natural cover, natural habitat. Um, Themes around sustainable agriculture, planning and development, communications, all kinds of different things. And these sort of became in part our strategic priorities. So mitigating the effects of climate change being on at the top of the list, encouraging water and energy conservation, encouraging waste reduction, reuse, recycling programs, that sort of stuff. And of course, encouraging the conservation and restoration of natural features and habitats, which is part of that natural cover group mandate, if you will. And lastly, to identify new opportunities where business or employment that's related to climate change mitigation may be possible. So again, a lot of work that could be done. So the Environmental Advisory Committee has had a few successes in the short period that it has been around. And granted, many of these were started before the EAC committee was formed, but we'll sort of, talk about them anyway, and we're proud of them. So there was the street light, LED street light installation that took place. Of course, the new tree policy was implemented, and I'll talk about that in much more detail. I don't know how many of you know about the new anti-idling bylaw that is in effect. I think we're sort of trying to get the communications around that. Maybe they've already been sort of released. I might be a little bit out of the loop on that. And of course, the new official plan. So another really important point, something new that's happened, is the hiring of the sustainability supervisor and the sustainability technician. And these two people work in the operations department, and they work pretty closely with the natural cover group, and very often they're also present at the EAC meetings. And I must say that these folks are just they're great to work with, and I feel that now that they're on board, I feel that there are a lot more opportunities and things will actually sort of happen because they're interested and they're supportive. It's my understanding that that was not always the case in the past. So I think people make all the difference. It doesn't matter what organization we're talking about. If you've got folks who are keen and willing, then a lot can happen. Yeah, the other point is that both the operations and recreation departments are working with the EAC and the natural cover group. So we're on the same page. It's just I guess it will take a little bit of time to sort of create some new programs and new opportunities. So we're all sort of trying to make that happen. And one last point here was, it was really neat actually, when we were finalizing the tree policy, one of the things that we wanted to get a handle on was what is the current forest cover in the areas where the tree policy will be applicable, so mostly in the settlement areas. And we were able to partner with Fleming College and their GIS program, who I think it was fourth year students who basically used aerial imagery, and they were able to estimate the tree cover in Bloomfield, Wellington, and Picton. And all of those communities have in the low 30s when it comes to forest cover. So that's great because we have sort of a baseline estimate for tree cover as we're starting off with this new tree policy. So that was a great partnership, and it was free to us. It was a great experience for the students, and hopefully we can, 10 years time or whatever time frame we feel is meaningful, we can do that again, and hopefully those numbers will be increasing over time. So we're also looking forward to some successes. This has already happened. So the EAC has organized sort of a teach-in for council and staff and our committee members with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities through their Partners for Climate Action programming. So we're learning about what other municipalities are doing to tackle climate change, what funding is available, what training is available. So that's starting up. And I believe there's maybe the sustainability supervisors looking at waste reduction plan. He's all excited about composting and adopt a tree program, of course. And Lise is at the meeting tonight, so she knows way more about that than I do. But I believe we are going to have some sort of a formal adopt a tree program. Okay, so the reason why I'm here is to tell you a little bit about the natural cover group. So I did mention that we were all asked to sort of put forward goals and ideas for issues that we felt were important. And of course, for me, the natural cover in Prince Edward County was top of mind. And the natural, so I think at the beginning, there were two people. So it was myself and Councillor John Hirsch, who were the natural cover group. And then other members on the EAC committee were sort of their water group or communications group or whatnot. And what ended up happening, I think it was earlier this year, maybe I've lost track of time a little bit, but the CAO of the county was sort of looking at existing groups and committees and sort of organizing things. And she decided that the ad hoc tree policy group that was already in effect and working very hard towards having a new tree policy in the county, that group was basically to join the natural cover group. So John and I were really lucky because we were the only group under the EAC that actually had additional members. And we had a very specific goal. So our number one goal was to basically make sure that the tree policy was approved and it began to be implemented. So we were lucky in the sense that we scored a really hard-working bunch of people, and it really made the natural cover group a group. And we do meet about once a month, and there's never enough time to sort of discuss everything and do everything. But I feel we've made, just with the tree policy alone being finalized, it's so important. And that can help us promote other tree planting events and making sure that we look after our forest cover. And again, just so the function of the natural cover group is sort of like we advise the Environmental Advisory Committee. So anything that has to do with the conservation or stewardship or restoration of natural cover in the county, we can be tasked to provide information or recommendation to the EAC, who will then pass it on to council and staff. So again, no power and maybe a little bit of responsibility, but it's quite the privilege to be able to provide some input to various decisions. Okay, so I'm talking a lot about natural cover, and I am talking to a club who is all about nature. So you guys probably don't need this, but I kept the slide in here anyway. And for me, when I'm talking about natural cover, I tend to think about the vegetation communities on the landscape. I think water is also a form of natural cover, but I seem to be ignoring it here and ignoring kind of hard paved urban areas. So forests and wetlands are the types of cover that that make up a big part of our natural cover. And of course, they are home to all kinds of wildlife, very important, very diverse. They provide us with many gifts, and some people call them gifts or life support or ecosystem goods and services. Basically, we need these natural communities to make sure that we are okay. And so it's really important for us to care for these communities in return, because they provide everything that we need. So that's no news to you guys. And this is just sort of what the natural cover of Prince Edward County looks like. It's a little bit of a mosaic, some natural areas, some agricultural areas, some small urban areas. And in the right bottom corner there is a picture of the watershed report card that Quinte Conservation produces every 5 years. And and in the report card, they score different things. So they look at groundwater quality for the wells that they monitor. They look at forest cover, wetland cover, things like that, and they give them a grade. So I believe in 2018, when the last report card was produced, Prince Edward County got a C for forest cover. So about 30% of our landscape consists of forest, either upland forest or treed swamp forest. And according to various guidelines, or the one that I refer to in particular, how much habitat is enough, which is a federal, I guess, guideline on how much natural cover is recommended to help maintain biodiversity and ecosystem function. 30% of forest cover is very low, and it's kind of a high risk situation to be in. You're at risk at losing diversity. And particularly with emerald ash borer being in Prince Edward County now, where we will lose our ash trees and ash forests. And we have, some communities or some forest communities that are really dominant in ash. So this is a huge problem. Not only are we at sort of a low percentage of forest cover, but it's about to potentially get worse. And we need to work together to figure out, not only how to maintain what we have, but how to increase it, because probably the target that would be really great to have is more like 50%. But there's a lot at play. That being said, I think everyone has an opportunity to contribute to improving and caring for the forest cover or natural cover in the county. So we're in this together. And I will talk about different funding and stewardship programs that are out there that may be available to residents of Prince Edward County to again help make natural cover, keep the natural cover. And more specifically, the goals for the natural cover group, we were told that each of these interest groups under the EAC had to come up with sort of its terms of reference. So these were our draft terms of reference. And again, we were to finalize the tree policy, follow the guidelines that I just mentioned, the how much habitat is enough guidelines in terms of what our targets for forest, wetland, and grassland habitat should be. We are to promote tree planting opportunities, both in urban and rural areas. One of my pet favorites is the creating initiatives where folks can without fear of reprisal to basically have alternatives to lawns on their properties. So to have a wildflower garden without the fear of a neighbor complaining and the county telling you you have to mow your weeds down. So we want to encourage that as an opportunity. And I'll talk in detail about that. We were hoping to develop an invasive plant management strategy, but I think it would probably make more sense if we focus on the emerald ash borer and forest cover. So we haven't gotten to that yet. And another goal of ours was to protect hedgerows, because that is an issue in Prince Edward County as well. So we had a huge list of things that we wanted to work on, and we're slowly making our way through it. Okay, so I've mentioned the tree policy a number of times, and I just wanted to provide you with more detail. And I hate slides with lots of text on them, so don't look at the left-hand side, just look at the pretty picture. And let me just tell you sort of about the main points of what the Tree Management and Preservation Policy, or the tree policy for short, what it's all about. So the tree policy applies to trees found on municipal lands. So parks, maybe cemeteries, road right-of-ways, as well as development lands. So subdivisions or land that is proposing development and is being reviewed under the Planning Act. And so these two types of lands, municipal and development lands within settlement areas, are basically required to follow the tree policy. The policy does not apply to trees on private properties outside of settlement areas or on existing, private development. So like my place that's been around for a long time, the policy does not apply to it. The policy does strive to enhance tree cover. So we talk a lot about making sure that we don't lose our tree cover, because we recognize the value of trees and all that they do for us. The policy encourages planting a diversity of locally appropriate native tree species. So there is a list that was developed through a lot of work and expertise of mostly native species of trees that would be suitable to different site conditions. There are some non-native species that were included in that list, and the thinking was that sometimes in urban areas, some non-native tree species might be just better suited. So those were kept as well. But the idea is to plant a diversity. Don't fixate on one species or one genus of trees, but try to have a variety of species. So, 10 years from now, when we have another insect or virus or fungus, that begins to kill off trees, that we don't lose all of them. So if we only planted ash or elms, we would be in trouble. So that was a huge point. The policy also provides direction on how to care for trees. So things like pruning, watering, protection during construction. And a big thing is that the policy requires the replacement of trees that are lost. If they're cut down to make room for development, they need to be replaced. What else is there? So the policy, of course, needs community efforts. Perhaps some of you attended the tree planting event at Delhi Park that was organized by Tree the County, and it was such a wonderful event. So the idea is to encourage and support more efforts such as those. And the last point is very important. So the Environmental Advisory Committee via the natural cover group is to assess how the tree policy is performing. And we sat down and came up with a list of performance indicators. We've discussed that with county staff who will be collecting that information. They have a database. They're keeping track of trees that they assess, trees that they remove, so that we can, after 3 years' time, we can report to council. I'm sorry, there's some noise. Dear. Ooh, I didn't want to skip ahead. I'm sorry, there's some interference from people in the basement. Guys. My apologies. It's not the dog growling, it's people hammering. Okay, so those are sort of the key points about the tree policy. And I like the little graphic of the native and non-native trees in here. Again, that relates to our native tree species list. That's part of the policy. And we are encouraging the planting of native species that are part of, as much as possible, of the ecological food web, sort of in the Bay of Quinte, Prince Edward County area, because they will support more biodiversity than the non-native species. And those of you who like Doug Tallamy know all about the research. I don't need to convince you. But I also find that planting a tree and knowing that you're supporting not just the human community, but the wider living community is an act of restoration. And because I'm an ecologist, restoration is a really cool thing for me. And so if I can do a small thing like that, it's important, makes me feel good. And I hope others feel similarly. Okay, so the other initiative that we are looking at and trying to encourage across urban areas in the county is this alternative to lawns, right? So again, Doug Tallamy talks about thinking of lawns as rugs, not carpets. So having, high traffic areas be grassed and the rest to be gardens, and hopefully with a high percentage of native plants. And the photo on the right-hand side, that's a photo in Picton. That's one of Ben O'Brien's installations with his gravel mulch, and his gardens look great, minimal weeding. That was a really nice lawn alternative that he put in. So the CAO, I guess, asked the Environmental Advisory Committee and the Natural Cover Group to review the existing grass and weeds as well as the property standard bylaws in relation to appearance and species composition and such, and to make recommendations for changes, for improvements to these bylaws. So really the main issues are that the bylaws are a bit vague in their definitions of, what is a grass, what is a weed, and oftentimes a neighbor can call, the county and complain that, oh, my neighbor across the street has this horrible looking weedy lawn, make them cut it. And so, the bylaw officer can come by and ask you to comply with the bylaw and cut your weeds. And very often neither your neighbor nor the bylaw officer are well versed in plant identification. They don't really know if it's a native wildflower or if it's a weed of some sort. So that's a huge problem, and there's a lot of conflict that can arise as a result. The other thing is that the bylaw specifies that grass and weeds cannot be taller than 20 centimeters or 8 inches. But there are many plants that grow taller than this, and even ornamental grasses or native grasses can be much taller than this. So it kind of doesn't make sense for that clause. And also importantly, the bylaw doesn't acknowledge the fact that the Ontario Court of Justice basically said that it's a person's right to have natural gardens as freedom of expression under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So the bylaw that we have in effect in the county is actually illegal because the courts have ruled, I think it's from 1996, that people are allowed to garden as they wish, as part of their freedom of expression. So that's an important point. The property standards bylaw has similar, I think, issues that is just a bit vague and doesn't define things very well. It does, however, reference noxious weeds as classified by the Weed Control Act. So that's a bit better and specific. And so those were some of the issues, very simplified. And we looked at other municipalities and sort of chatted with some ecologists and gardening experts. And we were lucky that we were looking at these bylaws around the same time that the City of Toronto was updating their grass and weeds bylaw. And we were really impressed with the very two simple changes that were proposed and approved in the City of Toronto, which we thought would make a lot of sense here as well. So we are recommending that the grass and weed bylaw be completely removed, deleted, and under relevant sections in the property standards bylaw, we add these two clauses that we prohibit the growth of a list of undesirable, invasive, and noxious plant species. And that list has yet to be developed. We probably will be asking for some expertise, things that make sense locally. But again, we don't want someone with a garden full of dog strangling vine to, we want to sort of limit the spread of invasive plants as much as possible. And some education will be required around that. And then the second point being that, we require that turf grass, which is, that it be well defined of what kind of grasses are to make up turf grass, that those are basically kept at no taller than 8 inches. And the idea is, I think, that most residents or neighbors are worried about that neighbor that just lets their lawn go and it's full of tall grass and it just looks not great. So if you have lawn and you just stop mowing it and it sort of looks like an unmowed lawn, not a garden, then you would be required to sort of keep it looking maintained. And we are suggesting that these changes be applied to, again, settlement areas. That sort of makes sense. I have included links to the two bylaws as well as the City of Toronto changes for your information. There's a lot of good background there. Okay, so I'm at 34 minutes. If anyone is asleep, wake up, I'm almost done. So even if you live in town, like I do, you have a lot of options open to you. So you can think of a variety of little habitats. You can have little forests or pocket prairies, rain gardens, ponds, log piles, bare ground, you name it. There, you can do a lot of ecological restoration in your backyard in town. And I wanted to tell you about our grant. So the Bay of Quinte Remedial Action Plan has a grant for rain garden construction. And I believe folks in Picton, Belleville, Trenton, sort of urban areas that drain into the Bay of Quinte are eligible for a grant of up to $500 to purchase native plants and whatever materials, mulch, soil, gravel, pretty rocks, that you need to build a rain garden. We've had maybe 4 or 5 rain gardens that have been built. I think there are 2 or 3 in Picton and a couple in Belleville. And so, I mean, the winter is not a great time to build your rain garden, but it sure is a great time to design your rain garden. So feel free to contact. I have Jason Jobin, his contact information at the bottom there, his phone number and email address, and he will help to walk you through the process. We have a YouTube video. We did a little webinar a year or two ago about how to build one of these things. So there are a lot of resources, so don't feel intimidated. If you need some help, there is help out there, and I encourage everyone to build a rain garden. It's so simple. It's basically a little depression in the ground with some plants. Okay, so in terms of native plant sources, Lower Trent Conservation has a native plant sale, and we usually start it in November. So I'm a little delayed, so I'll probably have our online order form live on our website in mid-November. So we typically sell native tree and shrub seedlings, some potted saplings, wildflower kits, and this year we're very excited to introduce little forest kits. We'll only have about 5 of these kits available, and the idea is that they're designed following the Miyawaki little forest sort of planting methodology, where you try to have a lot of diversity in species in terms of trees and shrubs that are planted rather densely in a small area. So I've designed the little forest kit here for an area that's about 4 meters by 4 meters, and planting about 2 or 3 plants per square meter. And Sheila did look over my list a little bit, but I did steal the species list from Little Forest Kingston, which is a group that's just on fire when it comes to little forests. There's lots of other nurseries where you can get some native plants. And lastly, the last slide here, if you're interested in doing some restoration or naturalization, there are a lot of different grants and funding sources and technical experts out there that can help you. The Bay of Quinte Remedial Action Plan has programs for rural areas, helping folks with their septic system if they're on the Bay of Quinte. If you're a farmer and you're interested in cover crops or soil testing, there's funding for that. Quinte Conservation is really great, again, with offering different services for planting. Ducks Unlimited work in this area, and they create wetlands. If you have some land that you would like to plant trees, probably the best deal out there for large scale tree planting are the subsidies and grants through Forests Ontario and their 50 million tree program. They have similar programs for grasslands in Ontario. If you have some provincially significant wetland on your property or endangered or threatened species, you may be eligible for a nice tax break through the Conservation Lands Tax Incentive Program. If you're planting forest, already have woods on your property, you might be eligible again for a tax break under the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program, and the list goes on and on and on. So if you have any questions about any of these, feel free to reach out to myself or the BQ app or Quinte Conservation, and they'll help to connect you. But there is a lot of funding that's out there for folks who have projects in mind. And that's it. And in terms of the Phragmites work, Mark Forget is just a Renaissance man. He's interested in all kinds of different things. And I mentioned to him that Lower Trent has a property in the center of our watershed. It's like this giant green heart, and it's the Murray Marsh. And there are some frag stands out in the marsh that we just can't get to. And we were worried that they were the invasive Phragmites, but it's hard to get to. So Mark is developing a technique using a drone where he's trying to identify stands of native and non-native Phragmites, basically from the air. So you don't need to risk your life going into the mucky soils. And I understand he's working in the Crow, Lower Trent, and Prince Edward County watersheds. So he's close, but my understanding is that the wind and, he's just not getting great resolution as great as he would like it to be. But I would watch that guy because he's going places. So we're very lucky to have him. Okay, that's it. I'm sorry I'm a little bit over time, but I'm happy to answer questions if there's anyone still awake or if we still have time. And I'll stop sharing my screen. I see Myrna's hand is up.
That was tremendous, Eva. Really tremendous. Can you talk more about the programs you were talking about? I'm really interested in that.
The stewardship programs, the last slide.
Yeah.
So a lot of the programs have sort of a clean water focus. So many of the sort of BQ RAP funding sources are intended to improve water quality. So that can include things like buffer strip plantings around waterways or shorelines, cover crops for fields, alternate watering systems for livestock, fencing for keeping livestock out of areas. So those are sort of typical projects. And let's see, the septic system program. So anyone on the Bay of Quinte who has a septic system and, wants to have it checked out by an expert who can give you a little bit more feedback about, oh, this is failing, you need to replace this, or this is how you maintain your septic system. So it's a great program because I think the cost is, or at least it used to be, $200-300 or something like that, and you get a lot of a free pump out, basically. Not free, but you get a pump out and some advice as well. The rain garden program is fairly new to the Bay of Quinte Remedial Action Plan sort of stewardship umbrella. But again, it's meant to sort of capture water where it falls instead of letting it run off into the sewer systems and into the lake,
Good.
So and I feel like people are becoming more interested. It's not a very intimidating type of garden. You don't need to be an engineer to make a rain garden. You just need to sort of follow some key guidelines. But $500 for a rain garden is pretty sweet. I'd probably spend it all on plants, but you're allowed to buy all kinds of stuff. What else? And Quinte Conservation is just a great resource. Maya Navrot at Quinte Conservation, she's their stewardship coordinator, and she's always applying for funding. So the list I have might be outdated. She might have some additional programs. So anyone who's, even considering doing some active restoration on their property, whether it's urban or rural, give Maya a call and pick her brain, see if she can give you some suggestions on projects, and then maybe she knows of funding sources if your project is pretty large scale. How is that, Myrna? Is that good? Because I could probably talk forever.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Paula was just asking, it's in the chat.
There we go. Okay. I see the chat. Okay.
Would you like me to go through them?
Sure.
Okay, we've got some really lovely comments and some good questions.
Thank you.
So from Alex Schultz, thank you, Ewa, that was great. From Mark, which would be Mark Projet to everyone, thank you. And
Yay.
shout out to Mark, which you did beautifully. From Elaine Jackson, to everyone. Is there a list available of native trees and others recommended available to us? So that are suitable for the county.
So I guess, for example, if you check the tree policy appendix, I believe that tree species list is in the appendix. It will identify which are native, which are not native. Some of the plants might be more Carolinian, like Kentucky coffee tree. I hear a lot of people are excited about Kentucky coffee tree. Sheila, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel it's more southwestern, like way south western Ontario, where you would find Kentucky coffee tree.
Well, except that Kay has it in Kingston.
Okay. Naturally occurring or planted or?
Well, she can tell us.
I understand that the naturally occurring stands are actually quite rare. That there are only a few of them. That it's been planted well beyond its range, and in fact, there's a very old, century or more old Kentucky coffee tree in the Cataraqui Cemetery. And I was all excited about these things that came up on my front lawn, and they're still there. And I don't know where they came from. And I suppose you've heard about the association with megafauna because of the thick pods. They have trouble reproducing because they relied on megafauna to chew through these thick pods. And I spoke to, so that's why they're rare, supposedly. Then I spoke to the gardener at the cat cemetery, who said, oh, those seedlings are all over the place. But the guys go and mow there, and the blades chop these things up, and they sprout everywhere. Right. So if anybody would like a Kentucky coffee tree, you can come talk to me or the guys at the cat cemetery. They have actually some very interesting trees in there. I mean, they have, they've been gardening for more than a century in there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it depends, like if you're a purist or if you like plants in general. I'm trying to be really strict and pure here, but even I can't resist planting some pawpaws in my backyard, right? Yeah. So try to...
And I must tell you, Eva, that none of us can find the tree policy on the county's website.
So this is hilarious because that little summary that I had about the tree policy, I wrote that because it was asked of me so we could communicate, hey, there's the tree policy. And I just sort of assumed that someone did that and it was on the county website. So it's kind of crazy.
Well, that, I'm sure it's somewhere, but it's a bit of a mystery.
Right. So do you want me to send it to you guys and ask again? Where in the world is it? Okay. Yeah, no, that's so unfortunate.
Have more luck than, than the rest of us. And from John Foster, great presentation and full of good info, absolutely. From Henry, this is a really very important issue, and it's all over the county actually. Is the EAC aware of the extensive hedgerow removal occurring along Fry Road and on Big Island? I have heard that the provincial government provides funding for these activities. Quite a conflict of purpose with the EAC. Can you tell us anything?
Yeah, I don't think we've discussed those locations in particular, and I don't think we've really talked about hedgerows in a long time. I remember it was sort of an issue that was noted because there was a lot of discussion in the community, but I will find out what we know, and yeah, I'm curious about what funding this would include. So I need to do a little bit of digging, and I'll circle back.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. And from Gord, has the county changed their roadside clearing policy? Perhaps he's talking about those big munching machines.
Yeah, so I believe that clearing or whatever they call it is still going on, but because of folks like you who send emails and call the county and say, oh my God, this is what's happening. Did you know that trees have been injured? And basically county staff go out and investigate. And what we've been hearing is that future contracts will have to basically take into account the more time is needed to mark and identify trees that need to be protected and not damaged or removed. Trees that have been damaged during these brushing activities. I can't remember, Jerry, if it was you or Susan Banks, but again, photos and details of locations, and I believe the sustainability technician went out and did some pruning. So I feel like staff that are on board now are a lot more reactive, and I believe that they're working to resolve some of these issues that are just so unnecessary. So that's a great point.
Why we asked is, we live south of Milford and on a road called Daynard. I guess in early summer, there was a crew, clearing about, I don't know, 10 feet or 10 feet down the side of the road. And I said,
right to the fence line.
Yeah, right to the fence line. So I said, I think that's a shagbark hickory, and they didn't cut it down, but they were young. I mean, they're not, they're 15-year-old trees maybe or younger. Mm-hmm. And they cut down a variety of oaks, a variety of maples, who knows how many other, shagbark hickories or bitternut hickories. Mm-hmm. And I wish I had known, or maybe there wasn't at that point in time, where I could go to record this. And yes, we should have taken pictures, but I didn't know it at the time. Mm-hmm. So it's, I mean, it's a crazy policy, absolutely crazy policy. Yeah. And
well, again, it doesn't seem to make any sense with respect to what you've told us, with respect to what Henry brought up about hedgerows. Yeah. The hedgerows around here are almost all gone.
Are disappearing.
Yeah. Large farming.
Yeah, some of them leave the more mature trees, but the smaller species.
Yeah, it goes.
It's gone. Like it's.
I did forget to mention another important point that's part of the policy, and that is the policy. I did talk about the fact that trees that are removed need to be replaced. And I think it was Councillor Ernie
Margetson.
Yes, that's right. Margetson suggested that during brushing activities that mature trees or I wonder if we said like 10 centimeter diameter at breast height, if we specified the height or not. I can't remember. But he said if we mark and identify mature trees to prevent them from being cut and removed during these brushing activities, we can sort of count them as extra trees. So instead of having to plant a tree, if we save a tree, then it could kind of go towards these replacement trees. I mean, it's I think the great point there was that all of a sudden people were like, oh yeah, we can do that. Whereas before we thought that brushing was just, you couldn't alter it. It was just this thing was going to go through and cut everything. But it turns out that no, it would be possible to retain trees. It's just that someone's going to have to go ahead of the machine and mark the trees that are to be left alone. I, of course, would prefer that if we cut trees somewhere, we plant more trees. But like I said, it's early days for the tree policy, and it's important to just kind of get to work and identify what works and what doesn't.
So thanks.
I would suggest that that same concept apply to hydro, because hydro cuts down more trees and I've never seen hydro plant a tree.
Yeah, yeah, that's another good point.
So
Yeah, maybe there's something we can work out with hydro.
So John Lowry wrote this. You mentioned a teach-in for council regarding the Partners for Climate Protection. Is council opting to participate in this program or still in the mode of considering participating in this program?
I guess they're still considering. They had just one session. It was just an hour long, but I think the fact that the entire council was interested, I think when you look at the map of municipalities across Southern Ontario, you know, municipalities that are involved in this, there's this dots all over the place. And then you sort of get to Northumberland County, Quinte West, Prince Edward County, and there's this big gap. There are no dots. So I feel like we kind of look bad by not participating. And honestly, the opportunities for support, including money, I think it's just too good to pass up. So I'm optimistic that that council will choose to fully participate, but I have no idea at this point.
If I could just interject at this point, the Quinte Pelee Naturalists under our advocacy, we've sent letters asking them to consider participating in this. So that's why I'm curious, because there's actually the webinar with Peter Jean Leslie that sort of alerted me to this, and so we approached Belleville, the Green Task Force, and Belleville was considering it.
Oh, nice.
And just to backtrack to the issue,
we're losing you, John.
Talking about hydro. You still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Back in the early 80s, I participated in a summer program where we were planting trees, and it was a lot of it was for hydro easements. So just I don't know if that's that doesn't the hydro actually would go in and pay to have trees planted on somebody's property if their hydro easement went across it. So I don't know if that still happens. That's going back to the 1980s.
I can definitely get in touch with Hydro and ask if they, you know, if they provide funding for community tree planting or if they themselves are somehow involved, because honestly, I don't know, but that's such a great point.
Thank you, John, for that. And from Susan Warwick, who is our membership coordinator, thank you. That was very interesting and informative and encouraging. So true. And from Lise Bois, who's on the Natural Cover group as well. Great information, Eva. From Paula, and I must call this to a close in a minute or two, but from Paula Peel, can you talk a bit about the benefits of rain gardens in urban areas from a wildlife perspective? Given the droughts we have here in the summer, would they not be dry most of the year?
A great point. Exactly. We can't guarantee that the rain garden will actually get a lot of rain. So the idea is to try and plant species that are tolerant of sort of wet and dry conditions. And yeah, you might get, you know, some years that are very wet and others that are consistently more dry. So that's a great point. In terms of sort of the benefits of rain gardens to wildlife. Again, an easy one is just the diversity of species that would be part of the ecological food web. So if we're providing those in an urban area, you know, a whole neighborhood, not just one person on the street, but if it becomes more accepted and encouraged, and you're basically feeding sort of the little critters that are eaten by the bigger critters, and you're basically sort of providing you know, plants to kind of fuel the whole system. So that's a big one. And of course there's shelter, taking shelter in vegetation and having cover and those kinds of things.
Thank you. So 3 more really quick ones. So from John Foster, John's the director of the Ontario Invasive Plant Council.
Nice.
Perhaps he can help with an invasive plant policy and also with your noxious weeds and invasive plants.
Excellent. That's great. Yes, please.
We can give you John's email, or maybe he can send it in via chat.
Sure.
And from Kay Langmuir, there is low forest cover in PEC and little protection for it, as many of us have seen in the past few weeks, traveling north end of 49 through the escarpment forest. Someone is clear cutting 20 acres to the crest on east side. Corner of it is EPA, but this doesn't prevent logging. Yeah. Private land is.
Yeah, we don't have a tree cutting bylaw. And unless that forested area is a wetland or maybe, you know, an ANSI and there's some kind of a development application in progress, not much that can be done. But I'll just take note of the location and see if Jane Leslie has heard anything.
It is an ANSI area. It is, I believe it's a candidate for a provincial ANSI designation.
Okay. Okay. I will follow up. Geez, lots of stuff going on.
And MNR, I guess, has a responsibility for that, for the ANSI designations. But
yes.
I don't know who to call in that ministry. That's where I kind of got.
Yeah, and I would start with the Conservation Authority or the Planning Department in the municipality.
Planning sent me to Quinte Conservation, and Quinte Conservation sent me to MNR.
Right. Great. And they didn't give you a number or a name at the MNR?
No.
They probably don't have one.
I don't have time for this. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I'll see if anyone's brought this to the EAC's attention.
You might have some trouble getting a hold of the MNRF because just recently they amalgamated Northern Development and the MNRF into a new organization called the NDMNRF. But keep trying. The people that were in MNRF are still there. It's just a matter of us pushing through all the bureaucracy there to get to someone. The Endangered Species Act might be in play with that woods that you're talking about. So there's another consideration.
Yeah, I think the MECP is looking after the ESA now, so it got shifted to a new ministry. But
so 2 quick ones from Amy, and then we'll get to the next part of the evening, which is very short. So Amy, to everyone, has the EAC looked at all at the spread of invasive species like Phragmites and wild parsnip with roadside clearing?
No, so we haven't looked at that in any detail, but we've generally talked about this issue, and I feel that the operations staff are open to. The Ontario Invasive Plant Council has a really great sort of protocol for cleaning equipment. There have been workshops geared at municipalities in terms of invasive species management and how to minimize the spread through various work activities. And I feel like the staff that we are working with are open to these things. It's just that they've got a lot of different things that all of a sudden they want to do. But I think that it's something that they would be receptive into looking further into and adopting into part of their work plan.
We just had a training. We just had a training program with staff at Hamilton. One of our employees went to Hamilton and conducted 4 workshops on invasive species.
It's so, great. Yeah, there are resources out there. Exactly. We just have to say yes.
Get in touch with us. Maybe we might be able to help with that.
Great.
Last one. Has the EAC, from Amy again, has the EAC considered possible hedgerow planting on county land like the Millennium Trail, which Amy and I know well is quite bold in some places?
Again, so I don't believe that the committee has considered considered the planting along the Millennium Trail, but what we are trying to do is to work with the operations department and come up with a list of possible sites, either for community planting or municipal planting, because we are going to need to plant quite a few trees. So we've been talking about places like parks, and actually we've had 5 different municipal parks identified that we were told, go ahead, create a planting plan. Stormwater management ponds and subdivisions, you know, and why not? If there's municipal land along the Millennium Trail, let's make a list. So I will pass this on to Adam, the Director of Operations, and add it to the list.
Great, thanks.
And with that, I will thank you for just a wonderful presentation, Eva. I've never seen so many people so deeply involved at question time, so it's really heartening. And what else is heartening is that the county councillors and staff are really listening now and look upon these projects kindly and with open arms. And we're so fortunate for that. But thank you for all the work that you do. I mean, you're really amazing, and everyone appreciates it.
Thank you very much. And I mean, all these good changes are happening because of folks like you. So thank you. Yeah.
And just one more thing. Oh, but after this, Amy will, I think, want to say something about the next meeting. But we have a little gift for you here, which I'm happy to deliver, as I know where you live.
Thank you.
So it's full of goodies, but this lovely bag was made by Myrna.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So
thank you very much.
Thank you again, Eva.
My pleasure.
Okay, so I think I'll stop the recording. Thank you, Eva. And I might talk to you, see if we could possibly put this up on the SSJI YouTube channel, because I think it would be a great resource for a lot of residents to find out more. And so I'm hoping that that might work out. So I'll stop the recording right now. Stop recording. Oopsie. Oops, I canceled it. Stop recording.